What's the greatest major on campus? Yeah, well, I'm not going to ask any more. That was extra credit. I think there's some people standing here. I don't know if we have any more seats. Probably some on the sides here. Or in front. Good seating in front. Good seating in front. Hi, I'm Tom Zeiler. I am your chaperone for this celebration of the best students at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I should add, soon-to-be former students in the program on international affairs. On behalf of the directors of this program, Robert McNown and Catherine Rousseau, welcome to IA graduation. We have a wonderful program for you today to honor these fine young people and to thank you all for your support through 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or however long it took. Before I make introductions on the IA program, though, I'd like to thank our piano player, Willie Hammond. Willie, could you come out here? Beautiful. Thank you, Willie. And we'll hear more from her, thankfully, throughout the program. I'd like to thank the people who actually made your success possible. No, not just the faculty sitting here. We'll get to them. The administrators of International Affairs who have been with you since the very beginning when you declared your major, masterminded the curriculum, gave class and career advice, and oversaw our numerous co-curricular programs and events, and supported the faculty. And they orchestrated this event today, the culmination of your career at CU Boulder. Can you believe that? It's almost over. First is our boss, really, the assistant director of IA, who really orchestrates much of the program, Catherine Rousseau, I believe, is standing back there. She's very embarrassed if I said that. So without her calm and smart guidance and deft diplomatic touch, this program just wouldn't run. Second is our new office manager, Allison Fesco, standing next to her, who is recently hired and helped organize this graduation ceremony. And third, but by no means least, are our two stellar advisors, Bevan Gum and David Bailey. I thought that would happen. They have the complicated job of figuring out how to fit together all the myriad pieces of being an international affairs major. You have to be the smartest major on campus because it's so complicated. There's so many departments. And then they advised you on majors, minors, certificates, as all of you know. And then, if that wasn't enough, on your careers and career choices. And they generally also listen to you, to many of you. They are each responsible. We have a very big major. They're responsible for about 500 majors each. So thanks to both of you again for a wonderful job throughout the year. Thank you. I'd like to thank our advisory board members. I don't know if they are in the audience, but they have existed for about 4 years, outside donors and people committed to this program who also are responsible for funding our global grants program that many of you in the audience earned. And, oh, I almost forgot these people up here. We'll get to them. They are a wonderful group to work with, as you know. We could not have a group more dedicated to students than this one, our faculty. I'm going to read out their names, hold your applause, and I'm going to have them stand up in all their regalia. Artemi Romanoff, David Burks, Elizabeth Dunn, Janice Brown, Jennifer Baer, Jerry Peterson, Joe Jupil, John O'Loughlin, Lorraine Bayer DeBolo, Lucy Chester, Martin Bollier, Melinda King, Paul Shankman, Robert McNown, Steve Chan, Andy Darash, Ben Davis, Gay Lynn Olson, Greg Young, Ken Scott, Mike Canner, and Mohammed Akasen. I'm going to ask the faculty to stand up now. Thank you, faculty. there is, I should mention, there is one faculty member who's not able to be with us here today, Jessica Martin, who, as many of you know, came down with a very serious illness and was hospitalized a couple of weeks ago and is dealing with that illness. Dr. J, of course, is beloved by many of you, and I wanted to recognize her so we can, either in your prayers or thoughts, get her on the road to recovery as quickly as possible. Thank you. And of course, there's some other people here. Guests of honor, you. But before I honor you, I'd like to try something. I'd like to give you one more bit of instruction. I know you're not listening, you're college students anyway, but now you're almost graduates. I'd like you to stand up and turn around or turn to the side, find your family and friends. Right now, go ahead, stand up. Stand up. And I'd like to give them a huge applause for your family. Huger than that. Let us clap for them. What great support for all of you. You could even throw your hats in the air and practice. Thank you. Thank you, audience. Thank you, parents, family, friends, and other supporters. Whatever you did worked. Whatever you did worked. We have just this great bunch here today. There are nearly 200 students or so sitting before us within moments, again, about to be, about becoming former students. And they're special to us. They're smart, they're committed, they're diligent people who have succeeded here at CU in one of the most demanding majors on campus. And if studying and taking 3 years of a language and doing this functional area or that geographical area isn't enough, they're also leaders. Among their many activities and interests, I got a partial list here. They work in the Conference on World Affairs and Admissions Office and Financial Aid and Cultural Events Board and other offices across campus. You can't find an office without an IA major in it. They're engaged in community service. They're in sororities and fraternities and a fashion design student association. That's why they look so great. They took part in Model UN and honor societies and held fellowships in the United Nations Association. In intelligence, they're on the dean's list, honors thesis galore, and frankly, all of us can attest when faculty in and out of the International Affairs program talk with IA majors, we all glow with the recognition that they are so good in class. And they're not done, of course. Near graduates report that they'll be traveling abroad and in this country as well, including on trips which they will use to fundraise for very worthy causes. And they'll work for refugee agencies, and teach for America, or go to graduate school in a host of fields, business and law and energy. They'll even run family business, and some will run for office. Thank goodness for that. The social commitment is staggering. These students plan to make changes in society, whether through their work with various communities, poor, gay, religious, sports, human rights, whatever. And if one thing comes clear in their desires, it's to affect change. Big capital letter change. They talk about change all the time, and they'll do it. You will do it. And how do we know? How do we know that you'll affect change? Very simple. You are majors in the program on international affairs. Simple as that. And you've made changes here already, and you'll continue to do that now. And as a historian, I'm in the Department of History, I know that the past can predict the future, not always perfectly, but in this case I know that these graduates will be ambassadors for change. And that leads to our keynote speaker, someone who has led changes during his long career at CU, and as our leader, as our director in the program on international affairs. Robert McNown, our director, who is stepping down from that position after 6 years of leadership in IA, will speak to us today. Before he does, I wanted to give you an idea of his long and glorious career here, and you focus on IA. While we have to let him go and retire from this position, we don't like it. He's a free agent now, and he tells me he does have a life outside of this program. He's a valued member of the Department of Economics here at CU Boulder since 1971. Professor McNown specializes in econometrics, with the use of statistics to explore real-world questions. Professor McNown is an expert on statistical analysis of labor economics and demographic forecasting, and international finance. He assisted the governor of Colorado with quarterly revenue forecasts. No surprise then that he keeps IAFS also within budget. He's also consulted with the Department of Justice, the U.S. Information Agency, and the Solar Energy Research Institute in Boulder. And like his world-class international affairs program, Professor McNown is also known literally the world over. The first recipient of the Calderwood Award for teaching in the Department of Economics, and I learned just a few minutes ago he'll also be awarded another teaching award at the economic graduation. He has instructed thousands of CU students. There are some 196 countries in the world. Robert not only has visited most of them, but he knows people in most of them, many of them his former students. A testament not only to his expertise, but also the fondness that students hold for him. Overseas, he's been a Fulbright scholar in Nepal and Vietnam. He's taught in Sydney and Beijing and led a semester at sea program twice, bringing his knowledge to students at docks and ports all over the planet. We're all envious because this fall he will embark once again on a semester at sea program. That doesn't sound fair, but he will do it again. In 2007, Professor McNown became the director of this great program and has made it the university's largest interdisciplinary major. Under his leadership, the program grew from 600 majors to 1,000. That's a credit to the programs and policies that Robert has established and maintained. He has helped create an advisory board that has, since its inception, as I mentioned, funded 42 global grants for study abroad. In addition, 2 global seminars for short-term study abroad are listed under the program, and more are in the works. Robert has been instrumental in emphasizing internships and experiential learning and professional development. And IA could not have a better voice on campus in faculty governance. He's a very respected voice from department chairs and deans for his strategic views and vision. He is also, and I'm going to embarrass him here, though his wife would agree, where's Lori? Lori, his wife in the audience, who's also a political scientist. He's also just about the nicest person you'll ever meet. And dedicated to this program and to international education. And to prove all of that, I invite him to the podium to give us insights gleaned from years in academia as our Director of International Affairs. Please welcome Professor Robert McNown.
Well, some of that was true. I'll let you figure out the parts. So this is the 12th time in the last 6 years that I've stood before the graduates of International Affairs. And I have to say, every time it just takes my breath away to be in front of this amazing crowd. And thank you all for coming to celebrate our graduates' achievements in this major. Now, in some of my description that Tom gave you, you see I don't look like a great candidate for the international life. I'm an econometrician. That's someone who crunches a lot of numbers and lots of statistical models. But some of the best and most meaningful parts of my life have been in places where data are sometimes scarce and sometimes computing power is limited as well. Yet these experiences have enhanced my life and ultimately enhanced my career as an econometrician. I decided early in my career that I wanted to live and learn internationally, and I'd have to find ways to do that. I've been blessed by many opportunities for international adventures, and in the process I've learned some valuable lessons. Every sabbatical and leave opportunity in my long career, I spent abroad with my wife and kids, and this has enriched all of our lives. For my first sabbatical, I got a Fulbright Award to Kathmandu, Nepal. So you might say I started at the top. Nepal is a beautiful country with warm and hospitable people, but it's also poor, disorganized, and at times quite chaotic. Before we caught on to the ways of Nepal, my wife and I would frequently show up at the university and find the doors locked and no one around. It seemed almost anything would cause the campus to close. Political activity, death of a foreign dignitary, or any of the innumerable festival days mentioned on no calendar that we could find were reasons to cancel classes. I learned that it was an important investment to have tea with my chairman, so that I might learn what unscheduled closures might occur. But even this was not foolproof. Once my wife's class was politely interrupted by a student who announced that the campus was closed for the rest of the day because the university's team had won a volleyball tournament. And then Nepal experienced its first elections. This closed the campus for months at a time. Because of political turmoil, I only completed 2 semesters of official teaching in the 2 years that we were there. It may sound like my time there was frustrating and wasted, and yet I look back at those 2 years as some of the best of my life, both personally and professionally. The institutions fell apart, but personal relationships provided an avenue to do something meaningful, both personally and professionally. I was able to work more intensively with select students and with my colleagues, created workshops on the introduction to computing for my faculty. We even took a field trip to see the only computer in the entire government of Nepal at that time, with their Census Bureau. And then we worked on handheld programmable calculators so that they could begin to learn the basics of computing. Because things didn't work out as planned, the experience actually became richer and more meaningful, both for me and my hosts. I'm so proud that 4 students and colleagues from those workshops eventually came to CU and earned their PhDs in our economics department. So a lesson I've learned from this experience is one that I've seen some of you graduates also put into practice. Sometimes you need to work out the existing mainstream institutions to make things happen. Trying to buck the system may be futile, so you figure out how to work around it and make things even better. My next lesson is that you must always be open to opportunities. You never know what a chance encounter might lead to. Shortly after China began to open up to the West, my economics department hosted a visiting scholar from People's University in Beijing. This man, Professor Guo, had earned his PhD from our department here in the early 1950s and returned to China to share his knowledge of economics that he had learned at CU. Well, he became quite famous throughout China as the translator of Paul Samuelson's Principles of Economics text. Now, this, unfortunately, did not work out too well for him during the Cultural Revolution. As with so many of his academics in China, he was sent to the countryside for a long period before he was able to return to his university. But anyway, during his return visit to Colorado, I happened to be seated next to him at a retirement dinner. We chatted about China, about the economic changes in that country, and his life as an economics professor. At the end of the evening, I said to him, without much expectation or thought, if you ever need a visitor to come to People's University to teach econometrics, please keep me in mind. A year or so later, I was invited by the Ford Foundation to go to People's University for a semester to teach. It was pretty clear where that invitation originated. There were many other lessons that came out of that China experience because that semester turned out to be during the spring of 1989, the time of the student uprising in Beijing and the demonstrations at Tiananmen Square. My family and I lived through an amazing piece of history, and there are many ways in which this experience has affected my worldview. Talking with the demonstrators and witnessing these events, I could understand profoundly the tension created by the liberalization of economic activity by a regime that maintained authoritarian political control. As one who has emphasized learning through books and classes all my life, I now understand deeply the importance of experiential learning that is part of our international affairs world classroom. Now, you will not all have the chance of being caught up in a moment of history, but many of you have had equally profound learning experiences through study abroad, internships, projects, or work. I've also had the chance, as you heard, to be on a study abroad program through semester at sea. And I've witnessed the transformative nature of a visit to the slums of Madras, or a tour of the prison buildings on Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was held for 20 years in a damp concrete cell. Being taken out of your comfort zone through experiences like this will impact you forever. Years later, when you hear news of places you experienced, it's more meaningful and interesting because you were there. These experiences also bring home to me how privileged I am. And I know that so many of you who have had international experiences have your own stories and experiences that will guide you in your understanding of the world. My last story brings the lesson of the power of forgiveness and reconciliation. During my last sabbatical, my wife and I spent a semester in Vietnam, a country that brings a certain amount of apprehension when Americans anticipate visiting. We lived in Hanoi, and we could remember when the only person we'd ever heard of who had visited Hanoi was Jane Fonda. Well, maybe this reference is too old even for the parents in the audience. Most Americans who travel to Vietnam do so with a certain amount of trepidation. We wonder, as former enemies, how will we be treated? Will we face anti-American sentiments from the people or from officials? When I expressed this concern to my friends that we made in Vietnam, their attitude invariably was, "You Americans need to get over it. We fought the Chinese for 1,000 years, the French for 100 years. The American War was a small blip in our history. But most importantly, the people of Vietnam want to move forward. They don't want to live in the past, and they do not maintain old hostilities. They want to build strong economic ties and diplomatic relations because they understand this is the path to their own future prosperity and security. If only other peoples had the same attitude of forgiveness and looking forward, the world would be much more secure, peaceful, and prosperous." One of our fondest memories of our time in Vietnam was from a chance encounter with a villager and his family in rural northern part of the country. My wife and I wanted to see village life up close, so we randomly stopped in a village and began to explore. We came upon a small group of houses that were built on stilts, with the lower open area providing shelter for supplies and sometimes livestock. A woman carrying a load of firewood saw us and beckoned us to follow her into her house. We climbed up to where we met her husband and her 2 children. The husband asked where we were from. I'm not sure how these things get communicated with no common language, but they always do. He was clearly thrilled to learn that we were from America. Soon we were inside. We were spreading out mats on the bare plank floor for us to sit on. The large room was filled with sacks with some kinds of grain or rice. There was a loom, pots and pans, a small fire pit, and strangely, a modern sound system. The son tried to remember a few words of English that he had learned at one point, and then suddenly hopped up and found his English language pamphlet. We were able to find words like mother, father, son, daughter, and establish all the relationships. We learned they had a hectare of land, and in addition to growing rice and vegetables, the man received a pension from his service in the army. At that point, I suddenly realized that he and I were contemporaries. I was at the age that was ripe for military service in the war, but had avoided the draft. We both knew that we could have been enemy combatants, and yet here we were being welcomed as Americans into his home. There was certainly no dwelling the past or recriminations for the hardships that he had endured during the war. And finally, in an unorthodox bit of international diplomacy and understanding, he gave me a hug and a kiss on the cheek when we finally left his home. Finally, I have to include my opportunity to serve as Director of International Affairs as another wonderful international experience, even though I have to say much of it has been vicarious. I've had the honor to work with my staff who really put their hearts and souls into this program and so much care about our students, and the unbelievable International Affairs faculty. I marvel at the extraordinary talent and dedication of such special teachers with various talents, both in the classroom and with their research and travel all over the world. And finally, I am continually inspired by you, International Affairs students. I've truly had the privilege of hearing from students who are dedicated to international service, and many who are self-starters. I've seen students who are not content to simply work for an NGO, but have created their own international service organizations. I've heard stories of students who go on study abroad, and then seek out the opportunities to teach English, or undertake work in orphanages, or go off to the countryside and work in healthcare delivery. And I've marveled at students who work with refugees facing crisis situations and how they rise to the occasion. We mean it when we say we want you to keep in touch with us, and please let us know where in the world life takes you. Your experiences, both while you are here at CU and after you graduate, motivate and challenge us every day. It has truly been my great pleasure and honor to work with all of you.
Thank you, Robert, and we will miss you a lot. What are those green cards in your hands? What are those? Your names? For what reason? Oh, we're going to call you out? All right, I see. All right. You're not former students yet. You want to stand up again and thank your family? They're insisting on it. No, we'll wait. All right. We have some student award and recognition to give out, and then we will get to our main event. That includes, those recognitions also includes our honors graduates. I'll wait on that just a second and turn that over to Professor Vicki Hunter, who I mistakenly did not name as one of our faculty, except she's such a core faculty member that I just forget about her. And she also broke her wrist, so I'm angry at her for running in Boulder and tripping over roots. And I think Robert needs to take her on a semester at sea. You could say. All right. We have an honor society in international affairs called Sigma Iota Rho, and among those are the leaders of this program, student leaders of this program. And I'd like to recognize them. They're here to stand up. Emily Kane, Hillary Grossman, Tyler Quick, Leah Reynolds, and Amanda Fender.